Good morning. Several years ago, I was walking with my kids and they noticed a bird that was flopping around on the ground. Well, we went over to investigate and we soon found out that he couldn't fly because he had broken a wing. So we went and found a box, we caught the bird, and we drove for an hour to the nearest animal shelter that would take birds. They don't all take birds. They told me that it was just a common sparrow that we had found and they would do what they could to fix his wing, and if they couldn't fix it, they would let him stay there at the shelter. Well, my kids were very happy that we had helped the bird and he was going to be okay, and I couldn't believe that I just drove that far to take a sparrow to the doctor. I didn't really want to do it at first, but then the words from Matthew chapter 10, verse 29 through 31 came to my mind. Are not two sparrows sold for a farthing, and one of them shall not fall to the ground without your Father? But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear ye not, therefore, ye are of more value than many sparrows. God cared for that sparrow. The Bible says that not one will fall without God being aware of it. That's how important his creation is to him. The Bible says in Psalms 104, verse 21, the young lions roar after their prey and seek their meat from God. God is the one who provides for his creation. Now let me ask you a question. If God cares enough to take the time to make sure that the lions have their meat, and he knows when a tiny sparrow falls to the ground, don't you believe that he will care for you? Jesus said that we don't need to fear because our value to God far exceeds the value of a common little sparrow. How valuable are you to God? Well, it says in Psalm 139 that God has more thoughts about you than there is sand on the seashore. His thoughts for you are innumerable. You cannot even begin to comprehend how God cares for you. And in Jeremiah 29, verse 11, it says that God's thoughts that he has toward us are thoughts of peace to give us an expected end. It says in Psalm 56:8 that God collects your tears and keeps them in a bottle. And not only that, but he records them in a book that he keeps. He has a record of every tear that has fallen from your eyes. That's how much he cares for you. In Isaiah 49:15, God compares his love for us to a mother's love for her child. He says, can a woman forget her sucking child that she should not have compassion on the son of her womb? And if you're a mother, you would understand that that would be a very hard thing to do. It is possible to forget a child, but very hard. God continues and he says, yea, they may forget, yet will I not forget thee. That is a promise from God. He will not forget you. That's how much he cares for you. Verse 16 of that same chapter continues, behold, I have graven thee upon the palms of my hands. God has you written on his hand. The other night in church, I saw a verse that I wanted to write down in a book that I have, and I didn't have a piece of paper, so I just wrote it on my hand. That way I would see it when I got home easily and remember to write it down. Well, God has you where he can easily and readily see you. That's how much he cares for you. In Malachi 3:16, it says that if you fear God and think about his name, he records it in his book of remembrance. He won't forget that you fear him and that you've thought about him. That's how much he cares for you. My mind started to think about this on that day that I was driving an hour to take that little sparrow to the bird doctor, that God must care so much for me if he cared about that tiny sparrow. I am by no means any type of scientist, but I do know that in the vastness of the universe that God created, the earth is but a speck. Think of a grain of sand compared to the entire ocean. And man, we need to go even smaller than that. Earth compared to the universe, or even just compared to our own galaxy, the Milky Way, is so small that we literally cannot wrap our head around that concept. I tried looking up the size that scientists of how big the Earth is compared to the universe, and scientists cannot even accurately describe it. There is just no comparison. One scientist said, "Just don't think about it. Your mind won't understand it." That made me laugh. But I want to think about it. I want to think about the comparison of how small the Earth is compared to the universe, because then I may begin just a tiny bit to understand the size of God's love for me. Now think with me. If the Earth is that small in comparison to the universe, how small would I be on that tiny Earth in comparison with the universe? And how small would a sparrow be in comparison with God's great universe? That just blows my mind. Our minds literally cannot comprehend God's love and care that He has for us. If the God who created this amazing universe sees when a sparrow falls to the ground, don't you think He sees and understands what we are going through right now? I know He does. Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows fall? Why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home? When Jesus is my portion, my constant friend is He. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me. When you're feeling discouraged, when the shadows threaten to overwhelm you, when you're feeling lonely, remember how much God cares. You are of more value to Him than many sparrows. I'm very thankful for that sparrow we rescued many years ago, and my mind was reminded of these lessons I learned from that day. When I was out walking with my kids on Monday, we saw another sparrow that was hurt. His leg was broken. So we stopped again to try to help, and thankfully, after just a few minutes of rest in the shade, she gathered her strength and flew to the lowest branch in a nearby tree. I believe that sparrow was God reminding me right now how much He cares for me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know He watches me.